the last video we talked about unit rates, and we said they were a special ratio. They compare one value or a value to a single unit. They use this word per. We set them up like a ratio, but we divide, instead, of just reducing. And some of our examples of our everyday talking include like miles per gallon, miles per hour, how much money per pound, how much money per ounce, things like that. And one thing I neglected to mention is when you report your answer in a unit rate, you have to include the names of the units. So, for instance, we talked about, like if you have so many miles per gallon and all that stuff, and I gave an example with my car. If I say I could drive my car 426 miles in on 17.6 gallons, we said something like that. Okay, when you go to report this answer, whatever number you get here, you have to include your number. I'm not going to work it out. Your number, and you have to include miles per gallon, or else it really doesn't have any meaning. So even though it seems like a lot of extra work to have to write down your words beside it, you have to include that as part of your answer. So keep that in mind as you work some. Now, let's work some unit rates together, some examples. So I'm going to be working from the TABE fundamental books, and they have some good challenging examples, and we're going to work through several of them on this video. So pause the video as we get started. Pause the video and see if you can't work them yourself, but I'm going to read them and work them out. So Sam ran 3 laps in 12 minutes. Write Sam's speed as a unit rate, and now this is important, in laps per minute. Laps per minute. Remember how I told you to set it up like a ratio. So you set it up, and you need laps, and then you need minute. So you got to get this part right so you'll know what to do. Then you go back to the problem and you find what you're looking for, laps, 3, and then you put 12. So his ratio is 3 laps per minute. But if you want it as a unit rate, remember as a unit rate you have to divide the top by the bottom, and yes, that's the big number. The small number divided by the big number, which I know a lot of times we see that and we think we've got it backwards, but you can do that in math. 3 divided by 12, I'm not working it like a fraction, is 0.25. Now I'm not finished because I have to report the units, and that's laps per minute. So 0.25 laps per minute. Another example problem here. Franklin drove 129 miles in 3 hours. Kevin drove 173 miles in 4 hours. Whose average speed was faster? That's very common in these standardized test questions, whether it's the TABE or the HiSet or the GED or even the task. So you've got to compare these two unit rates. So remember when we talked about comparing price? This is the same thing as comparing price. When you have your 2 unit rates, let's see, we've got Franklin and we've got Kevin. So I'm just going to put F and K, and I'm going to set them up in a T-chart. That T-chart just helps me see things. And I want to compare their speed. So you need to know that speed is in miles per hour. That's assuming you know that. So you look at Franklin from our problem here. Franklin drove 129 miles, so it's going on top, in 3 hours, so it's going on bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and set up Kevin. We know that we still need miles and we still need hours. and Kevin drove 173 miles in 4 hours. Now that's great, but that's a ratio. We need to report that as a unit rate. So you get your calculator. Actually, I'm going to write it out, and maybe you need to write it out a few times just to make sure you're setting it up right. So you're going to take your 129, remember top divided by bottom, and work it out, and you get 43. But wait, you've got to include those units like those infomercials. But wait, there's more. So he drove 43 miles per hour. We look at Kevin. We have top divided by bottom. That's the way we work that. 173 divided by 4, and we get 43.25 miles per hour. And then we go back to the question, whose average speed was faster? So who was faster, Frank or Kevin? Well, actually, if your speed is higher, that meant you went faster, so Kevin went faster. All right, now let's just do a couple more problems that are kind of long and cumbersome. At work each day, Marta writes an email to each of 12 potential new clients. Who writes emails to potential clients at a greater rate than Marta? Now remember, greater rate means they do better than Marta, okay? So there's one of those math words. We have to know what they're talking about. So we are trying to figure out which one of these people, look at all the different people they've got here, is going at a greater rate, faster than Marta. Well, the only way to know that, you can't just eyeball this, which a lot of students do. They're like, oh, that's a big number. They must be going faster. Okay, because this is a rate, you have to work it out. You can't really determine who is faster or slower without working it out. So I'm going to work it out on my whiteboard, and I encourage you to work it out with me. First, we need to figure out Marta. It's a long problem, and it takes a lot of work. Okay, Marta, and we want to know the rate. First of all, we've got to know how are we going to set this up as a division problem? And it says, at work each day, Marta writes an email to 12 potential new clients. Who writes emails at a greater rate than Marta? So we need, this is kind of like some common sense here, that you're going to need your emails compared to your days. And if you look at your answers, it does kind of help you see that your rate may be in that order. So we need to know that before we can set it up. Then we look at our problem. How many emails? Notice we get a number for the number of clients, but we don't get a number of how many emails. It says Marta writes an email. How many emails is that? So that is one email for how many clients? 12. And then how many days? So lots of things to consider there. So if she's writing an email for each client, that's 12 emails, right? For one day. So that's kind of understood, and you have to get that from that problem. Now we can work that, but that's 12 divided by 1. So she writes 12 emails per day. All right, now we got to go and do all these other people. So we have Andre, and they have 22 emails over 2 days. And then we have Brittany, and she does 35 emails for 3 days. And Carl does 51 emails for 4 days. I'm just shortening up my words here because this is just my figuring, and they don't need to, I don't have to write the whole word out. Devin, notice their names all start with the letters that you're on your answer choice over 5 days. Elaine, 73 emails over 6 days. And Fawn, 87 emails for 7 days. So what you do is you take this to your calculator and you work every one of these out. Yes, it is a pain. I'm telling you right now. 22, now you could do some of this in your head, okay? But 22 divided by 2 is 11. That's emails per day. 35 divided by 3. Notice I don't clear the calculator. Is 11.66. I'm gonna round that up. 11.7. Okay. 51 divided by, work it as a division problem, not as a fraction. That's what a unit rate is, really a division problem. Emails per day. Remember, the higher the number, the faster your rate is. 60 divided by 5. 12. 73 divided by 6. 12.1, which I'm just going to round off to 12. And 87 divided by 7. 12.4. And that's emails per day. My writing is getting nice and sloppy for you now. The question was, we have to do all that work. We've got to remember what the question was. Who writes emails to potential clients at a greater, higher rate than Marta? Well, Marta writes 12 emails in 1 day. So is this person going to write more emails than Marta? No, they're not. What about this person? No, they're not. What about this person? Yes, because they went over. What about this person? No, that's exactly the same. They're not. What about this person? Well, I think I rounded that off, 12.1. So technically, I guess technically 12.1 is more than Marta. And what about 12.4? Yep. So my choices here are C, E, and F. So I have to be careful about what I round off. All right. So in the next video, I'm going to work just a few more problems.